Okay, we're back on our code editor, and I'm located in Lecture 35 folder, which is located in Full Stack Course 5 Examples folder. And this is our good old shopping list application. Except this time, as you could see on the left here, we kind of cleaned it up and split it up into different folders so it'll be much more organized than before. The index.html is, as before, pretty simple. The ng-app is pointing to this module, this app module, that's called shopping list. So that means that we have a module with the name shopping list. And you can see it's the same shopping list app that we had before. And at the very end, we have this loading spinner right here, which is what we're really going to concentrate a little bit on. And the way we're now importing our artifacts is through separate script calls. So we're clearly putting the jQuery and Angular itself into the lib folder. And if you could take a look here, those are the two files right there. So those are the things we need to load first, obviously. And then we're loading modules. You can see we're loading the source spinner, spinner.module.js. And if you take a look at the source, you'll see we have a shopping list folder and a spinner folder. Well, the shopping list folder where all the shopping list artifacts are located, the component, the controller, the factory, and the service. And these are all services and factories we've seen before. The shopping list factory, the weight loss filter service, we've seen all of them before. And it's actually a best practice to call them by the name of the service, then followed by period, followed by the name of the artifact. So in this case, I could clearly see that this JS file contains the component that is a shopping list component. So if I go to the shopping list folder and open up the shopping list.component.js, I could see that I am including, or I'm calling that component on the module called shopping list module. Well, where does the shopping list module come from? Well, there is a file called, as you could see at the beginning here, when we said that we're importing the modules up front, there's a file called shoppinglist.module.js. That's the file where we create and declare our module. Let's go take a look at that. So that's all it is. We're just simply creating this module, calling it shopping list, and giving it, for now, no dependencies. In every other file that we look at, we're simply retrieving that module. Notice that there is no second argument here that's an array. That would be declaring the shopping list module again, which would erase basically everything that's been placed into that module from before. So we're not declaring the module, we're retrieving the module and then calling the component method on it. And basically, in this case here, we have this shopping list component controller sitting right inside of the same file, which is sometimes people break that out and make that into a separate file altogether, and then somehow glue them together again by possibly declaring this as a controller on the module itself and just simply having Angular putting those two things together. And you can see that there's a factory here, and it's exactly the same thing. They're just separate files, but really they're all using this Angular module, Angular.module, retrieving the shopping list module to go ahead and declare on the very same module those same artifacts that we've declared before. Now we also have a spinner module, and you can see here spinner.module.js. Also, all it does is just declares or creates the module, and then let's say something like spinner.component.js actually attaches a component to the spinner module. And this whole thing, this whole spinner folder right here, contains everything we need for our loading spinner implementation. So you can see here, if we'll move this a little bit, not only do we have actual JavaScript, but we also have template.html, and that's where this comes in here, where we declare source spinner, loading spinner, template.html, and it's sitting right here in that same folder, and it's that same img tag as it was before. Okay, so I have my browser sync started already. Let's go to our browser, and let's go ahead and try this out. So we'll say chips, we'll say 4 bags of chips, we'll click add. As we click add, you can see that there's no spinner going on here. It's not really working. We can even put cookies here and add that. And something's definitely happening asynchronously because this doesn't show up right away, but still there's no spinner. Well, what's going on? What's going on is actually kind of simple. What's going on is if you look at the shopping list module, we're not dependent on the spinner module. So all we have to do is really take the name of the module, spinner, and go to our shopping list module and say the shopping list actually depends on the spinner module. Once that happens, this declaration right here at the very end, loading spinner, the tag, the element is actually going to be activated by Angular. Before, Angular didn't know what to do with it because it didn't know how to interpret it. So it basically just ignored it. But now, loading spinner will all of a sudden mean something because in the spinner module, loading spinner is a component. Loading spinner is a component, so it will look in the HTML for loading dash spinner as the element. So let's save that. Let's go back to our browser and let's go ahead and say chips, 4 bags of chips. Let's click add, and you can see now our spinner is showing up, so everything is actually working, and even the log methods are firing here, so you can see the events that are flying back and forth. Now, I told you that it doesn't matter how you declare the modules as long as you declare the module that you're using before you try to declare something that is already using the existence of that module. So therefore, if I wanted to, I could take this line right here, cut it out, and as long as I put it in front of the line that actually uses that module, so the script of loading spinner.component.js, well, it uses this module right here. So I can't really put this above that. But as long as I put it this way, let's go back to our browser, it will still work. We'll just put some nonsense here just to test it real quick. As you can see, still working, no problem. But if I go back and try to put this line right here, and try to put this line below this line, which means that the first thing that the browser will try to interpret is trying to retrieve our spinner module and attach a component to it. Well, that's not going to work because the spinner module at this point hasn't even yet been created. So let's save that. Let's go back, and you can already see we have an error. And if we click on that, actually, it will tell you something like module spinner is not available. So because we tried to create a component on a module that didn't really yet exist. So let's go back and fix that. Let's undo that and actually put it all the way back to where it was before. The next thing I want to show you is the config and run method blocks. Let's go to our spinner module.js and let's go ahead and declare the config and run blocks. I actually have it already pre-coded, so I'll cut and paste it here. And you can see here, I've created the spinner module, and now I'm retrieving the spinner module in the next line. I could have just actually put it as a .config right here, but it looks a little bit nicer if I do it as a separate line. So as you can see, I'm declaring the config function, which basically just going to say the spinner config fired, and a run function that is going to just say spinner run fired. And I want to do the same thing for the shopping list. And again, I have this pre-coded, so it's the same thing, it's the same config, the same run, except now we're saying shopping list config fired and shopping list run method fired. Let's go ahead and save that, and let's go to our browser and let's go ahead and take a look. Let's close this page and let's take a look. You can see here, spinner is something our shopping list module dependent on. So spinner fires the config of the spinner fired first, then the config of the shopping list fired. Then again, the spinner run fired because our shopping list depended on spinner. And then finally, the shopping list run method fired. Now, if we go back and change which module is declared first, you may think that this is because the spinner is declared first. That's why its config is firing first. If we go ahead and flip it and save it again, so now the shopping list module is getting read by the browser first, and the spinner module is getting read by the browser second. If we go back to the browser, you'll see that it's exactly the same thing nevertheless. The spinner module config gets fired first because it's a dependency declared on the shopping list module. So that's why the shopping list has to configure itself after all of its dependencies. And the same thing with the run method. The spinner run method gets fired first since it's a dependency on the shopping list module, and then the shopping list run method gets fired at the end. Okay, so let's summarize. Angular.module method takes 2 arguments to create a module. The first one is the name of the module itself, which is just a string. And the second one is an array of string module name dependencies. Angular.module method with just 1 argument, which is the name of the module, retrieves the previously created module. Then, once it's retrieved, you could declare components, controllers on it, and so on. The module.config method fires before module.run method. And in fact, all of the dependency modules get configured first, and then the module that declares a dependency gets configured. And the last thing to remember is it does not matter which modules are listed first in your HTML, as long as module declarations, that's where the modules are created, are listed before the artifact declarations like controllers, components, directives on that module, because those declarations use the existing module which needs to be created beforehand.